Now by the Energy Minister Charles Hendry and the recent Green Party candidate for the Mayor of London, Jenny Jones. Well, we just heard there. Can you guarantee that we will get a whole new generation of nuclear plants?
No, we can't, but what we can do is create the right environment in which companies want to invest. The whole purpose of what we're trying to do today is to deliver energy security, to do it in a low-carbon way, and to do it at the lowest cost to consumers.
Yes, but how can you guarantee it if there are no state subsidies, and you've ruled out state subsidies, although you're guaranteeing contracts for energy supply, so in a way that is a subsidy, isn't it? Do you accept that?
No, I don't, because what we're saying is there's a higher cost for low-carbon technologies. The cheapest technology would be gas. We want a balanced energy portfolio, and if we want to see low carbon technologies coming through, be that coal with carbon capture, be it renewables, be it nuclear, we've got to have a structure which encourages people to invest in those areas. But we've got to make up for a catastrophic shortage of investment over the last 20 or 30 years in our energy infrastructure.
So in order to get that investment, you have, as you say, laid down inducements to energy suppliers to provide that investment, and we will pay for that.
The consumer will have to pay for rebuilding the energy infrastructure.
How much do you think that will add to the average annual bill?
Well, what we've looked at is what would happen with business as usual, and if we just went down the route of fossil fuels and the unpredictable prices. Well, it wouldn't actually be, because we've seen prices going up. Gas is actually at quite a high price at the moment. We know that coal is going to become more expensive as we have to pay for the carbon emissions on it, and we believe that the way that we're doing it will actually be a cheaper way of doing it than business as usual.
Are you convinced?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's very difficult to know exactly what this bill is going for, because it certainly will not reduce prices for the consumer, and it also won't, I think, actually produce the sort of energy that we want.
But it won't reduce the prices for the consumer. We've accepted that they will go up, but will it be cheaper? Can you speculate, say, would it be cheaper than if we stayed with the status quo? Of
course it's not. I mean, if they only, for example, started insulating people's houses, that would reduce every single household's bill by £180. That would be a really good start. And then if you started actually investing in renewables, Germany, for example, has a 21% market share in renewable energy, and their prices have consistently gone down, and that's the way to bring prices down. You reduce the need for electricity by insulation, and then you reduce the prices by actually going for renewables, which have fewer long-term problems than nuclear.
So why aren't you doing that?
Well, it's exactly what we did last year in the Energy Act.
The take-up has been... The take-up has... Well, it has... I mean,
it hasn't come in yet.
No.
So the take-up is inevitably going to be smaller.
But in terms of... No, but some of the inducements have come from energy companies, and people haven't taken those offers up, and from local councils offering people subsidies, and the take-up is low.
And that's why we've gone for an entirely new approach, so we can systematically improve the energy efficiency of our housing stock. But the approach which we're taking will deliver us energy security at the lowest cost to consumers, and it will fundamentally move us in a low-carbon direction. Yes, it will be nuclear. Yes, it will be a huge amount more renewables and carbon capture as well.
Let's come back to the nuclear. You've just said yourself that you don't know whether we're going to get a new generation of nuclear plants. You're going to set up this system. Who's shown an interest? Which companies are actually saying they're going to build them?
EDF, Centrica, Gas for France.
They haven't absolutely confirmed they're going to do this,
put in a planning application, and they spent some billions of pounds so far, which is quite a strong indication. And everybody who looks at this country independently recognises in 5 years we've gone from a country where nuclear wasn't on the agenda at all to one of the most exciting places in the world to invest in new nuclear. So we're seeing significant interest here, but also in renewable technologies as well. We want to see a broad portfolio.
But what are you doing about trying to get that diversification with some sort of emphasis on renewables?
Well, that's exactly what this bill does. It actually provides an incentive for people to invest in low-carbon technologies, and it will be a way of bringing down the cost of some of those renewables, so we do it at the lowest cost to consumers.
Are you dismissing this bill before you've really even sort of given it a chance?
No, of course not. I mean, my impression is that it's little baby, unstable baby steps towards what we're aiming for, which is a low-carbon future, but one that doesn't have the burden of nuclear problems later. You know, cleaning up the nuclear problem, it's always going to be a problem for the future. We can't afford that sort of money. Plus, I mean, my understanding is that...
It's a cheaper way of delivering it.
Well, it isn't when you have to actually pay for it through taxpayers' bills and through consumers' bills. It isn't cheap. The long-term impact of nuclear is way out of any sort of cost range that this government can contemplate.
I mean, Labour in the end would have had to have backed some sort of investment, or at least contracts to encourage companies to build a new generation of nuclear plants.
We clearly need new investment. We need big incentives for renewables. We need to tackle energy efficiency. And we are prepared to see development of nuclear power stations. The problem which the government's got into at the moment is it doesn't seem to be able to find a way of making that happen which is affordable. They've had 2 companies that have already pulled out, and what we want to look at, because we're not in any way signing blank cheques, is when the statements are made, and they're made before the publication of any papers at all, that this isn't a subsidy, but we are signing long-term contracts at guaranteed prices. That sounds to me pretty much like a subsidy.
It recognises there is a higher cost of low-carbon electricity, and if we want to see that balance in the mix, we have to get twice as much investment every single year of this decade as Lord Adonis achieved in his decade in power. That we saw a catastrophic falling off of investment in our energy infrastructure. We have much of our coal plant closing, much of our nuclear plant closing. We are playing catch-up for that appalling failure, and we are determined to do it in a low-carbon balanced way.
And renewables can't fill that gap in the way that the Green Party envisages.
Well, in fact, in Germany it's doing incredibly well, because they are planning, in fact, to close down their nuclear power stations and use renewables more.
And
it can be done. It can be done, and it seems to me that if you reduce the need, then you also reduce this desperate drive to use other forms of fuel. So it can be done, and this government, I think, is just not taking the giant strides they need to take in imagination.
The Germans have just slashed their solar fund, because that was 50% of their energy subsidies for 3% of their electricity. And that what we've seen now with the German decision on nuclear is they're burning more coal, they're going to be burning more gas. So we're looking at a balanced approach, which is actually very sensible for our energy security, and looking to see how we can secure that investment at the lowest cost. It does require a major change to the market. This is the most significant change in the electricity market.
And there has been an awful lot of criticism about the sort of subsidies that have been given for people to have, wind farms and, having onshore wind technology, which people also say, very expensive for very, low capacity.
We have to invest for the future, and the fact is that when you invest in nuclear, you're actually committing yourself to more problems and more expense in the future, whereas with renewables, it's an upfront cost, but then later it becomes cheaper and cheaper. And quite honestly, why would we not want to reduce people's need and at the same time make their bills lower? To me, it's dinosaur economics that you're using to justify nuclear.
I think it makes the case for why we need a balanced market, a balanced situation, because...
Only if it's achievable, though. Are you going to reach the low-carbon targets? Are you going to get a new generation of nuclear power stations? I mean, in other words, there's a big risk the lights really will go off.
The whole purpose of this is to encourage people to invest in the United Kingdom in the energy sector, which they haven't been doing on the levels which was necessary.
And so when do you think they are actually going to, when these contracts are actually going to be signed and sealed, and you'll know you're going to get that investment?
Well, what we're doing for those who want to make an investment decision this year, working with them now to give them the price for that investment. And so that's a process of negotiation, but companies like EDF need that decision this year.
OK, just finally. Jen.
Well, my understanding is that Centrica has actually withdrawn from the plan for Hinkley, for example. That's not true. At a time when credit ratings agencies and private companies are backing away from nuclear, why are you insisting on going forward and offering them billions to build?
All right, I'm going to have to stop you both there, but thank you very much.